Hello and welcome to episode 344 of Retro Encounter, RPGFan's weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and we are here with two other intrepid chronicles of RPG anthologies to discuss Live Alive, the 1994 Square classic game that was recently made available to a much wider audience, getting a full worldwide release on Switch for the first time. But before we go into the nitty-gritty of Live Alive, let's introduce the rest of the panel, starting with Wes Iliff.
Hey, everybody.
And responding to my threats to make him podcast with me about this game on our 3DS episode, Tom Cox.
Hi there.
Wes and Tom, Live Alive Remake came out in July, and so I gave us plenty of time to start playing it so we could podcast about it on a later date. And I regret to inform you that I did not reach the breakpoint I was hoping to. Live Alive is an anthology RPG that is 7 sort of short RPG stories that eventually coalesce into a sort of connected final chapter story. And I wanted to play those first 7 before recording today, but I had a busy week and some unforeseen circumstances, so I've only completed 4 out of the 7. But we are we ready to talk about the 7 mini stories that comprise the first 2/3 or so of Live Alive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, heck yeah.
All right. Excellent. So let's go into background a little bit. This is a 1994 Square RPG, and that's the same company in the same year that Final Fantasy VI came out. And what Square did at the time was they recruited 7 popular manga writers that were that had active series in 1993, 1994 range, and it had each of them submit a character design. And then around those character designs, or maybe a couple character designs, the writers and directors of Live Alive sort of crafted 7 miniature stories and then a connected story, uniting those 7 timelines somewhat. And the game's director was Takashi Tokita, who was one of the lead writer directors on Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger, FF4 before Live Alive, Chrono Trigger after Live Alive, and eventually the same for Parasite Eve and FF4 the After Years and a couple other games with Square, and he's still with the company. And maybe most notably, for fans of RPG music out there, this was Yoko Shimomura's first game that she made with Square. She was with Capcom for several years before Square, where she worked on Street Fighter II and the Breath of Fire games, among several other titles. But this was her first project with Square, and we know her now as the architect behind the music of a bunch of Mario RPGs and the Kingdom Hearts series, and a lot of the first Xenoblade Chronicles and many other things. So this is early works of a couple, like legends or semi-legends of RPGs of the 1990s. So that was intriguing to me. Wes, I know that you did play the Super Famicom version at an earlier date, but are now playing the 2022 re-release. What's your background with Live Alive and your current impressions on the new version?
Yeah, so I picked this up when I was in high school, so late 90s, early 2000s. When they had a fan translated version out, whenever that came out. And I was so excited because this was this weird anthology RPG. It looked really varied and different across, each game really felt unique. And I absolutely fell in love with it. So this game has been, part of the conversation for me for ages. I've tried to get other people to play it. For some people it's hit, for a lot of people it hasn't. But eventually, once this remake was announced, I was over the moon because I figured, okay, they're going to do a few things to clean this up and really win over some of those people who didn't love it before. And sure enough, it seems like it has. It's lost very little in the translation, aside from some little graphical flourishes that were kind of neat at the time. But it's gained so much. It's improved so much over its predecessor that it really does feel like the definitive version of this game.
What's one change to the 2022 version that stood out to you? Because I should mention, I did try to play this game in the early 2000s. I was in high school or maybe early college, and Wes, you and I are around the same age.
Yeah.
So I attempted to play this, didn't get very far, even though I was really trying to play all of the Square games and all of the good Super Famicom 90s RPGs. But for some reason, it couldn't grab me. I think I was going through the prehistory story and couldn't figure out where to go next, and then fell off of it. And again, this would have been I'll make up a year. It was probably 2004 or something. Um, but find it much easier to get into now. But what's one change you've noticed that it's done for the better?
The most noticeable one for me, aside from the obvious, graphics and voice acting and music, um, is the fact that during battle you have these little ATB style bars above your head to help you determine, okay, who's coming up next, what's the order of operations going to be here, how much can I fit in of these like charging abilities? Because in the SNES version, there was really nothing to indicate who was coming up next and how long it was going to be until your next turn, which made it a lot harder to plan an entire combat out. Whereas in the remake, I mean, it's all there in front of you, um, and you can make much more informed decisions. And the fact that it was kind of a guide game before it really needed help getting from place to place, having destination markers kind of helps that even out a little more too.
Yeah, the destination markers in the remake aren't perfect. Like sometimes it'll just tell you where you're supposed to go next, and not that you need an item to get there.
Yeah,
Like the minor things like that. But it is overall very helpful and communicates way better than the original version. And I usually think of games with visible progress bars and charge bars that you can time for use of in interrupts or similar.
yeah,
I think of that as Grandia combat, even though I know more games than just Grandia do that. But this is a pretty good version of Grandia combat, I found.
yeah. Agreed. And you couldn't have really told from the original. The fact that that feels unique to this version is, even though the battle system's more or less the same, is pretty cool.
All right, so Tom, I know that you probably didn't play this in 2004 or earlier, like Wes and I did. But what's your experience with Live Alive, and how have you found the new remake?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely haven't played the original. In fact, until it was announced at the direct like earlier this year, I wasn't even aware it was a game. So definitely like the more I read up about it, the more I was like, oh, I definitely want to give this a go. But when it first like popped up, I was like, oh, I've never heard of that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So like of what I played, I think it's also probably one of the first like anthology style games that I've ever played. So the whole thing's really been quite a interesting experience.
Yeah, I haven't done the deep research, but this is the only anthology style game I know of this time. There's, I mean, there's games like the Seventh Saga where you choose a main character, and that affects that affects the story and gameplay. But like in the Seventh Saga, or games with multiple playable characters, the story is usually the same. This is seven completely unrelated stories that I mean, individually they would be short and maybe a little bit feature light, but they are self contained and their own thing throughout. So I don't know of many other games like that. And I should mention I was aware of this game for a while. Like when I was getting into Super Famicom emulation, like Live Alive would show up like Seiken Densetsu 3 and Tales of Fantasia and Treasure of the Rudras and even Terranigma of great Super Nintendo RPGs that did not make it to North America. And I tried and played almost all of them at the time, but Bahamut Lagoon's another one. But this was one that didn't quite take for me. But the changes in communication and clarity and the visual upgrades of the remake were exactly the right opportunity. And before we get into the individual stories, um, I think this is a very beautiful game. The sprites are expressive. They use the 2.5D HD 2D style that was that really knocked people's socks off with Octopath Traveler in, I guess, 2018 was that year. I could be off on that. And
I think it was,
yeah,
yeah.
and then more recently Triangle Strategy. But it doesn't feel quite as crafted as Octopath Traveler. Like this is an HD 2D update and not a standalone HD 2D game. But I still think it looks great. Like it's to use a comparison that many people have used in the past. This is how you remember 16-bit games of your childhood feeling like, while actually looking much better than they were.
And it's impressive too because this game feels so unique. We'll probably talk about how each of these chapters almost feels like its own genre in some way or another, and that makes this feel modern. So even though it's not technically a brand new HD 2D game, it doesn't feel like an SNES game that's made to look prettier. It looks like it belongs in the visual style and the modern era that it exists in.
Yeah, I don't think I probably understood every reference made in these 7 chapters perfectly, but they all feel like a very specific genre of film or television or video game. That
Yeah,
and
you can definitely see some of the film inspirations in quite a few of them.
yeah,
Some
and
very specific films.
yeah, some very
Yeah.
specific. Like I can make at least one specific film reference for each of these, I think. And but it does help that one of them I think is feels more like a manga than a TV show. But what we can talk about that when we get to it. But are ready to jump into the 7 scenarios?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. You know what? Well, let's start this off talking positively. Give me your favorite of the 7 and an abridged version of how it goes. Starting with you, Wes.
So my favorite's always been Cubes, the Distant Future chapter. Favorite back when, favorite now, because it's this little sci-fi pastiche playing a little bit with things like Alien, especially, where you were just this little circular, adorable robot named Cube, in this kind of cut off space station, spaceship. I don't know. It's one of those two.
This is one of the ones I haven't gotten to yet, but the comparisons I've heard the most are Alien and 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Absolutely, because it kind of transforms from one to the other throughout, and you're just this little helper robot who doesn't really interact much with the world around them, but has to kind of solve and figure out the mysteries of what the heck is happening on this ship, while all of this cast of humans are going increasingly mad, or their interpersonal relationships are like, the secrets are coming out, and there's all of this drama happening around you, and you're just trying to manage and stop everything from getting destroyed as unknown terrors start making trouble with your crew.
Yeah, what if Sigourney Weaver was a cute little robot boy with a baseball cap?
Exactly.
Tom, I mentioned this. I haven't gotten to this one yet. And I will talk. I will bring up the ones I have played versus haven't played as we move on this episode. But what were your impressions of the Distant Future chapter?
Yeah, I really liked it. Obviously, it's quite like like you can see the callback to Aliens and stuff like that. But I just generally thought like the whole sort of there wasn't much combat, and it was more sort of like horror. I guess you could. Well, I don't know if you could call it horror, but definitely a lot of suspense.
Okay, but is there a fail state? Is there a way for Cube to perish in this story? Because I have heard that this is a story heavy combat light chapter. Is there a way to lose or die?
From what I played, I don't think there was. That I may be wrong. I don't really want to go into spoilers
No.
because
We
you haven't
no
played
no
it.
no. Don't worry, Tom. You have not podcasted with me much, but I care so little about spoilers more than anyone else I know. So don't worry about that.
Okay, so earlier in the game, like the crew are in the break room, and there's like an arcade cabinet, and so later, and that is basically the only way to kill the ship's AI in the end. And but I think that's the only fight that I came across in the entire chapter.
Yeah, you essentially, the way that you can lose is if you don't use the arcade earlier to power up Cube a bit. That final boss can wreck you. At least in the original version. This is the one that I didn't get to this go around, or at least I'm partway through it now.
And I'm not entirely sure, but I know when the part where the monster breaks loose, I didn't get caught by it, but I'd imagine if you do get caught by it, that might cause a fail state. I don't know.
Yeah, but for the most part, it wants to be like almost a horror visual novel in some ways, which is one of the most interesting things about it. That's why I love it so much, is that it's totally different from the rest of them, which can be said about quite a few of them. But this one in particular, not leaning on the combat, is a daring thing for a Super Nintendo RPG.
Well, okay. I'm very intrigued by this. I think I knew that the final boss was the ship AI. It's some because I remember there was some kind of HAL comparison I read about, but otherwise there's not much combat in this chapter at all. I'm looking forward to getting to it very soon, maybe even later today. We'll see. But I have to ask: is the final boss at the end? Does he have some kind of Odo or Odie name?
Oh yes,
Okay, yeah, all right.
as it should be.
It becomes very clear to the player as you play through Live Alive that an ODO or ODI name is always the name of the final boss of the chapter, and the exactly the identity of the boss is what can be wildly different whether it's it's a dark god in near future, a dinosaur in prehistory, and a very rude man in present day. But we'll get to all of those one by one. But Wes, you mentioned that Distant Future was your favorite scenario. Tom, what was your favorite scenario that you played, or if it was Distant Future, and instead of repeating, what's your second favorite?
So no, my favorite was probably the Twilight of Edo, Japan, and basically the premise of this one is that there's a sort of, I guess you could say, a civil war starting across Japan, and you're like a shinobi. You're basically tasked with saving a prisoner from like an enemy, like I guess you could say, temple. Um, I think what really stood out to me with this one was like obviously everyone likes to be a ninja, but um, it's more just it was like really I think probably like the most stunning one of all of them. I would say like you could really tell like they went to town here. You know, like I think one thing that I really liked was you could run into like I assume it was an optional boss, but it was like this giant koi fish, and it was just like beautiful sprite work. So yeah, so you come across like the prisoner, and you have to sort of with him make your way to the sort of I guess you could say like the general, and you take him on, and all this time you're sort of like, who is this prisoner? You don't really know who he is, and that is revealed at the end. He's actually British, which is quite interesting. But yeah, in general, I thought it was definitely my favorite chapter.
Right. Well, this is remarkably another chapter that I haven't gotten to yet. Of the one of the, I guess two of the three that I haven't played. So maybe I'm gonna have a new favorite in the next 48 hours or so. But like from what I can gather, this definitely is an homage to ninja action movies and dramatic samurai movies. Your maybe like the films of Akira Kurosawa, or like the Zatoichi Blind Samurai film, something like that. Like a silhouette of a ninja running across a like a bamboo forest kind of deal.
Yeah,
But
very much.
yeah, the other thing that I know of this chapter is it being, because you're just a single person infiltrating a castle and then accomplishing your mission. There's like a lot of exploration and sort of non-linear progress to make, because it's like finding, it's a slightly Metroidvania-ish, like
Yeah.
find a key in one place to open a door in another place, and just sort of non-linear progress like that. But also and both Tom and Wes, I want to hear from you on this. I understand there's a way to uh go through this with 100% stealth and not kill anyone except for some unavoidable bosses. Is that right?
Yeah, from what I could tell, there was. I mean, I tried to play pacifist up to a point, and then I got to this one door, and I just couldn't figure out how to get past it without killing the guards. So at that point, I sort of gave up. But I think what's quite interesting there is then you start to rack up like a kill count, so you can see how many enemies you've killed, which doesn't happen in any of the other chapters.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This might be the most gameplay focused chapter because most of your decisions are stuff like that. Do I kill this person? Do I spare them? And if you do the 100% pacifist run, it's hard. Like, good luck doing it without a guide, because there are so many things that, like, you have to be on time, on target. You have to keep track of the passwords. You have to do all of this special stuff to make sure that you don't kill anyone but the essential required bosses. And then those bosses are going to be real hard because guess what? You haven't leveled up.
Yeah,
Um,
I was concerned about that, because there is to a degree an experience grind in the four chapters I have played,
yes.
which again don't include Twilight of Edo or Distant Future, which are the ones where you don't have as much combat potentially.
So there are rewards for both no kills and all kills, which is also difficult because you have to kill everyone, not just enemies. You basically have to leave it in as a ghost town, which I could not do in a game. I couldn't bring myself to do that. Um, but if you do it with an absolute pacifist run, you get a really powerful sword at the end of the chapter. Um, the only thing that really matches it up is in the final chapter. You can get another hidden weapon that's roughly analogous to it. And that's kind of the big reason to run pacifist, besides just it's a challenge and it seems fun. Um, I did a little bit of both. I didn't go out of my way to get combat, but I also didn't want the last boss to be hard, so I definitely took down anyone who was looking for a fight.
Now, Wes and Tom and listeners, if you know me, you know that I am not a stealthy person even a little bit, whether I'm playing games or existing in the real world. So I probably won't go for a stealth run on Twilight of Edo Japan just because I am so miserable and get easily frustrated at stealth mechanics in games. I probably won't go for the 100 run either because that sounds like, I mean, the challenge instead becomes instead of avoiding every enemy, the challenge becomes finding every enemy, and that might be annoying too. So,
Well,
Yeah,
but
there's
but
some
but
missable enemies up in there if you
oh
try to
oh
go.
good.
I think there's also some enemies that may make it even harder to go pacifist. There's this particular one called the Relentless Maid. I don't know if
Oh
you
yeah.
have to kill her, but I did. And basically, for I don't know if she follows you for the rest of the game, but like, well, she doesn't follow you for the rest. But there's a period of time where every time you go through a new door, she's there, and again and again and again. So that basically makes it impossible at that
Wow,
point
that's
to keep the kills
that's a
low.
little bit too Majima everywhere for my liking. Yeah. Hmm.
Majima absolutely everywhere.
Oh boy. But I have seen images from this stage before, and it also, I think the castle is pretty gorgeous looking in this scenario.
Yeah, it really is. It's
Yeah, and from what I've been told, like I guess like maybe Wes, you can comment on this. It was also considered to be the most impressive in the original game.
Yeah, because trying to do something like a stealth game on the Super Nintendo is difficult enough, much less this big interconnected map that, to your point, Mike, it's very Metroidvania. You have to unlock things in one portion to get to another portion to make your way up through. And having that as a piece, like an anthology piece within 8 other anthology pieces of this RPG, is absolutely mind-blowing to see on the Super Nintendo. And you've still got these gorgeous, like, camera shifts where you run across the roof and you'll like see the side view, and just this beautiful imagery of, like, the moon and the sakura blossoms in front of them and you in front of the sakura blossoms are just gorgeous things to see on the Super Nintendo even.
Yeah, I mean, just this taking place in Edo, Japan, which I guess is Tokugawa era, so around the 1600s through the 1800s, like a beautiful castle or temple of that era in a dark and stormy night while you're a solo ninja sneaking through the castle or cutting your way through the castle, as it were. It's a cool look, and there are so many movies about ninja or samurai or the Shinsengumi, which are sort of like specialized spies of that era. Like that's a very specific mood. And I should mention, I looked up the manga writers for each of these 7 character designs, and the only one whose work I really recognized as carrying through to the present day was the writer of the Edo Japan chapter. It's the guy who wrote Detective Conan, or Case Closed, sometimes it's called in North America. So yeah, these were all popular mangaka of the time, but the only one that really rang a bell for me was the author of the Edo Japan chapter. But again, I have not gotten to this one yet. It may happen soon, but I'm going to do it as a change of pace. Talk about a chapter that I actually have finished. I think my favorite chapter of the 4 that I've played was the first one I did, which is Imperial China.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
it's really good. The main character is something that's a little uncommon in RPGs. It's an elderly man, who's a sort of a very round shaped, cheerful guy in Imperial China, who's the master of the Earth Fist, or the Shifu of the Earth Fist. Shifu is like a term meaning master, sort of like sensei. So you're the Shifu is his health is starting to fail, and he's gotten on in years. So he's decided he needs to take on a disciple for the first time. And it even starts with him trying to break a rock in half and being unable to do so, realizing that his strength is leaving him. So the first part of the chapter is traveling around the area. There's sort of 2 small villages near the mountain where he lives, and a bamboo forest leading to a temple. And he meets 3 young people that could be his disciples. Oh boy, I'm gonna have a hell of a time remembering all of their names. There is the bandit woman, Lei Kugo, in the bamboo forest, taking people's money, and she challenges Shifu. But after he defeats her, like, he basically tells her, "You do not lack in spirit, but your technique lacks refinement." So she says, "All right, fine, train me, and I'll use the whatever you teach me to beat your ass," which is an attitude that endeared her to me immediately. of course. But then in the two villages, he meets the other two disciples. There's Hong, who is a large, heavy-set guy who's unusually agile for being so big, but is also ravenously hungry, and he's caught stealing noodles from a local restaurant. And Shifu tells him that he'll if Hong trains under him, he'll teach him discipline and strength, and also give him all the food he wants to eat, which endears Hong immediately to him. And in the last village, there's the young boy Yun, who's younger than Leikugo or Hong. He has a bandana around his head, so he kind of looks like he kind of looks like Ryo from Suikoden 2.
He's got some real main character energy on
Yeah,
him.
well, he looks kind of like the main characters of Suikoden 1 and 2, now that I think about it. And I guess the bandana is more Suikoden 1, but he has some young boy, I want to get stronger to be the main character energy, for sure. And Yun is annoyed that bandits are bullying the elderly people in his town, including his grandma. So he wants to grow up to be a strong man, and he, unlike the other two, he actually asks Shifu directly to be his disciple, which Shifu accepts. So after you explore the area around you a little bit, Shifu takes the three disciples to his mountain area, and there's sort of a montage of Shifu training them by challenging them to fights one on one and having them gain experience. Shifu's level is frozen at 10. He can't gain any more experience. But every time you train one of your disciples or get into a random battle with the disciples at your side, they do gain experience. And they're very different. They start out with different moves. Yun has balanced stats. Hong has high attack and HP, but very low speed. And Lei Kugo has very high speed, but sort of average, but I think lower defense and average attack and HP. So and they have different starting moves as well. Like Hong's moves are all about food. Like he has like fire breathing after eating a hot pepper and so on. While Lei Kugo has sort of more agile area type moves. But and I don't think Yoon starts with any unique moves of his own. But you train them, and you can level up your disciples and give them bonuses to their stats. But at a certain point, the bandits that you've encountered a couple times attack your school while Shifu is away, and tragically, two of your disciples die. And that your surviving disciple is the one that that's gained the most experience, or I think is at the highest level, where you at the point where they attack. And so like if you're optimizing, you probably want to give all of the training that you can to just one disciple and have that one be the inheritor of the earth style. But I didn't quite do that, or I should say it's earth and heart style. I didn't quite do that. I sort of spread experience equally to all of them, but for the last round of training where they all gave bonuses to attack, I gave all of that training to Lei Kugo. So she became my she became my chosen disciple at the end. And then Shifu and whoever the surviving disciple is challenges the temple dungeon at the opposite end of the forest to defeat the evil martial arts sect. And I have to say, everything from the character interactions to how fun and different the disciples are, to the setting and the beautiful, relaxing music, to the arc of one of your disciples going from someone misunderstood or weak to quite strong, defeating the evil martial arts master at the end, whose name is, oh boy, I have to look this up. It's OD1 Lee. That's him. Defeating OD1 Lee at the end of the chapter. To and again, it's definitely based off of like wuxia martial arts stories and classic like kung fu movies of the 70s or even earlier, 36 Chambers of Shaolin kind of vibes. I just absolutely loved it. I really like Lei Kugo. I hope I know I'll be able to use her later in the game in the final chapter, and she's definitely going to be on the team when that happens, or at least I hope she is. I loved this chapter. Wes and Tom, what were your thoughts on the Imperial China story?
Yeah, I think one of the you touched on it earlier. The thing I really enjoyed is that so often in RPGs, you're the underdog or you're lower level and you've got to use sort of tactics and skills to overcome enemies. But here it's the complete opposite, and you can't possibly get any stronger. And it's all about sort of choosing who you want to succeed you. I went with Yoon in the end, but I just thought it was a really sort of quite a unique sort of take on an RPG.
Yeah, this was going to be my choice, if not distant future. This is a fantastic, fantastic chapter. And being able to like choose who you train and determine your inheritor and who's going to be around the next when you get to the final chapter is fascinating. It's something you don't often see in many JRPGs. I also went with Lei because it's the only possible female protagonist is one reason,
That's
and
right.
also
Yeah.
her move set is phenomenal. She's one of the strongest candidates. Yuan takes a little bit of love, but he can get pretty excellent too. And I went full min maxing, like I gave her everything, because it's
Yeah, I did the
interesting.
same for Yuan.
Yeah, yeah,
I think I gave probably half of the agility and defense training to Lei, and then all of the strength training. So she got let's say 2/3 of all the available EXP there.
yeah, and that's also similar to another chapter we'll talk about, where you can learn some skills if you hit the characters that you train with skills from the Shifu. Each time you train, they can learn one of the skills you used on them. So I went very hard to make sure that they got almost everything that Shifu had to offer.
That goes into one of the other scenarios that I did. Let's move on to that one right now.
Yeah.
This is a game or a game. This story resembles both a tournament fighting game like Street Fighter 2 or an action movie of a certain stripe, kind of like, Bloodsport starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, and also kind of reminds me of like uh juvenile delinquent battle manga like Crows or Worst or the Hirakawa Clover, which are a very specific genre that I like a lot. But the present day chapter is you're a juvenile delinquent boy that enters a martial arts tournament, but his special ability is that every time, and again, the enemies that you fight are martial arts stereotypes. Like a there's a kung fu master and a Muay Thai fighter and a professional wrestler and so on.
Literally Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, exactly. But he can learn the attacks of the enemies if they use them on him. I think the learn rate is close to 100%. I think I only noticed him not learning a move once. So you don't have to quite grind or farm for techniques. But yeah, this is the blue mage of the game. Like if he takes damage from special moves, he can learn those special moves, and that's how you sort of get him progressively stronger. Because I don't think there's no fighting and very little story other than just finding the next fight in the present day chapter.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
get a
I think
character select screen and everything.
I think in that respect, I was almost a little disappointed. Like there was so little story, it was just all, and it was over so quickly. I think it only took me like half hour, 40 minutes to complete the whole chapter.
It's definitely the shortest of the four that I played. I think
Yeah.
it was probably a half hour, and I'm glad it wasn't the first one I did. In fact, this is the most recent one I did. This is, I guess, 4th out of 4, because the I don't think the fights here are over challenging, but it helped that I was comfortable with the battle system by now.
Yeah.
Because if this was the first one I chose and I was thrown right into this battle system without really knowing how positioning works or how turns or interrupt works or how damage tiles work, I would have had a worse time. But by then, I had done a super boss and leveled up a bunch of characters, so I knew how the gist of the game went by now, which was helpful. But and I kind of like the structure of this one only because I'm on the record of on loving fighting games and Bloodsport starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and some of the genre inspirations here. But I it was probably the story lightest chapter, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't have minded if they had gone a little deeper here.
The only part that can make you need to put much effort into it is if you really want to learn all of the skills, because each character has 2 skills for you to learn, and the sumo wrestler has a hidden 3rd skill. And goading out those skills can require playing the same battle a few times. But honestly, if you're not going to use the character in the last chapter, get 1 or 2 that are useful for the final boss of this chapter, and you're good.
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about using this guy, mostly because I liked the 3 main characters of the previous 3 more.
Yeah.
So, but I was and I didn't even know there was each one had 2. I think I like after I learned 1 skill from each opponent, I just worked to defeat them. Is
Yeah.
how I approached it.
A lot of this is stuff you just won't know unless you've played it before or looked it up or something, which is one of the interesting parts about Live Alive. It's got some replay value for the fact that you can not see a lot of the game.
I did look up some details for twice when I was playing this, and both of them were for item reasons because we'll get to them next. Why not? The In the prehistory chapter, there's a crafting system, and in
Yes.
the near future chapter, there's an item upgrading system. And I looked up charts and how tos for both of those things so I could get good items. But otherwise I didn't really check a guide, and they do give you a window explainer on how Masaru can learn skills for the present day chapter. So that was enough for me. I just tried to learn one skill from every boss. And the final boss of this has one of the most extra names that I've ever seen in an RPG. And I love ridiculous RPG names. Don't get me wrong, but I mean Odie O'Bright is pretty out there.
It's great.
I don't know. It like I love it and hate it at the same time.
It depends on like how much you play when you start to recognize that the OD whatever is really standing out. Like, oh, this is in every single one, and you start to question it a little bit, and you start to see like purple mist every once in a while, and trying to figure out what that means. Maybe the least, maybe the strangest in the Wild West chapter, but we'll get there.
Yeah, so we have three left to talk about: Wild West, prehistory, and near future. Let's just take turns picking them one by one. Tom, which of those do you feel like going over now?
I'll go over the prehistory one. Not because I wouldn't say I particularly enjoyed this chapter. It was when I loaded up the game, I was like, I'm a little bit OCD, so I was like, right, I'm going to play this in chronological order. So I started with this one, and I think it's maybe quite a difficult one to start on. There's obviously no dialogue, and I was a little bit found like getting around. Maybe even though they did have the markers, sometimes the marker would just disappear, and that got a bit confusing. I was just a bit like almost frustrated, like these guys, they had cars, but they can't talk.
Well, okay, I think the cars might have been Flintstones cars that
Yeah.
are
Yeah,
that are
but
that
Fred
are
Flintstone can talk.
true.
Fair.
So this is picking and choosing levels of technology and sophistication from the Flintstones, and does not resemble the Honeymooners quite as much. Listeners, for those of you that don't know, the Flintstones is almost a cartoon ripoff of the classic sitcom The Honeymooners. But anyway, please continue.
But yeah, I mean, basically, it's I guess you could say a very sort of primitive like love story. I guess he falls in love with a cave woman, and she sort of gets taken from him by this gang in their Flintstone cars, and he sets off to find her. But yeah, I wouldn't say I disliked it because I enjoyed all the chapters, but I do think this is probably my least favorite. And maybe had I played a different chapter first, I'd have a different opinion. But I think starting off on this one was maybe not the best choice.
That was the number one problem that I had the last go around that I tried to get people introduced into this game before the remake was announced. Was so many of them did the same thing. They wanted to go in chronological order, and this is a terrible chapter to start with. It ends up being interesting and unique after you've played a couple of more like traditional, chapters that have the story presented via text like an RPG. And this can seem like a cool little, mix up to the formula, but when you play it first, man, it's obtuse. Like figuring out what to do and where to go and like how to figure out this crafting system. None of it is obvious from the get-go.
Yeah, like you can get materials from monsters, like fangs or horns or skins, and then you can exchange them to the crafter by giving him two, and it'll give you most of the best equipment available is just you can get right at the beginning. There's a mini game that even gives you like 6 random crafting items as a reward, and the mini game is even weird because they communicate it with images like a bunch of cavemen will go into haystacks, and the caveman in the middle will sometimes ask for which one has more, sometimes ask for which one has less. It's like figuring out the communication in this game because they're only communicating with grunts and images can be weird. But also Pogo, the little cave boy that's the main character, has a pretty good sniffer on him, and like when you smell flowers, that's probably either his cave woman girlfriend, or an actual flower. Or there's a lot of scatological humor in this chapter as well because both
Yeah,
both Pogo and his gorilla buddy have pooping or farting special abilities, and there's a number of of poop fart jokes to be found, or bathroom humor in other chapters as well. I think maybe the writers of this game were just regressing into their 11-year-old selves at times when they were writing jokes. But there is something charming about an RPG that's only grunts and emotions and no real dialogue. But it was way easier to understand now than it was for me to understand whenever that happened, 18 years ago, probably.
Yeah, and I imagine like at least with this one, like you had the marker that quite often told you where to go, whereas in the original, obviously that wasn't there, or from what I understand, it wasn't. So I think it must have been even more obtuse, you know?
Yeah, and this is also way longer than the other 3 chapters I tried. And when I was checking for crafting materials, one of the guides mentioned that there was a super boss, and I decided, oh, you know what? This is the 3rd chapter I've worked on. I'll go for the super boss. And it's towards the end, and it's a giant woolly mammoth that deals a lot of damage and can heal itself and can cover the entire field in fire. I don't know if you took on the King Mammoth, Tom or Wes, but it was the only time I really felt challenged this entire game so far. But it gave me an accessory that is plus 20 to attack, so worth it in the end.
Yeah, you could take that with you to the final chapter and feel pretty good.
I have no qualms at all. It's like, why not? Welcome to the team, Pogo.
Yeah, I think maybe like if I was to replay the game, I would seek out stuff like the optional bosses because I think not knowing what was going to happen in the game, had I known that when you get to the end, like all your stuff would sort of carry over, I'd have been more like enticed to do these things. Whereas I didn't know what happened in the final chapter, so I was just sort of under the impression of like, all right, well we'll move on from this one, and like nothing carries over. So had I known, then I think I'd have spent a lot more time sort of seeking out those like super bosses.
And I should mention, I think in general they intend for you to level up to around 10 in these chapters, but
Yeah.
for fighting this super boss, I think I leveled Pogo up to 12, then fought the super boss and gained another level from the super boss. So Pogo's 13, while my other 3 characters are level 10 or 11. So he's considerably higher level than everyone else. I'm probably going to take him through to the final chapter.
Yeah, he's a good choice for the final chapter. He's a beefy boy.
Yeah, I mean, even though I didn't particularly like this chapter, I did take him in the final chapter.
I was really amused with some of the visual choices here because Pogo Gory, his gorilla friend, they beat each other mercilessly. They're a little bit they're savage and violent. Like they wake each other up by punching or hurling each other. And I mentioned there's some poop humor in this chapter. Also, there's the caveman that keeps trying to kidnap the cave woman away from Pogo. He's wearing a loincloth, but when you observe him in battle, the loincloth is actually a gecko that's just attached to his waist. And one of his attacks is he rips off the loincloth, or he rips off the lizard from his bathing suit area and throws it at you. So the character design of a long-haired caveman whose only clothing is a lizard wrapped around his torso, I thought was pretty amusing. And also, to get weird about voice actors for a second, I immediately recognized that the voice of the cave boy Pogo is Megumi Ogata, who's Luffy in One Piece and Krillin in Dragon Ball. So of course the only time I recognized a voice actor in this game was him or her, because Megumi Ogata is a woman. But yeah, this is a longer chapter. There was more grinding than the others. I'm not sure we mentioned it, but the cave woman, I forget her name. I think it's Beru, or maybe Barry. She's
Nick Barry.
Yeah, Beru. Let's say Beru. She's about to be sacrificed to a dinosaur, which is why she escapes, and Pogo decides to rescue her. And then the cavemen from Lizard Boy's tribe are trying to get her back to use her as a sacrifice. And in the end, Pogo, Gory, Beru, and Lizard Boy fight the dinosaur yourself, and save the day, and peace is restored to these different tribes. But it's also sort of cute how the kind of sultry Beru is kissing Pogo on the cheek. It's like okay, I guess they just do it differently back in prehistoric times. But ultimately, it was amusing. But I agree, it's a poor choice for a first chapter, because it's just a lot to deal with at once, and is not not as fun or dramatic as other chapters that have real dialogue.
I will say that you kind of jogged my memory there, but the way that the parties work, like being able to have Beru and Gori and whatnot in your party, is pretty interesting because most of your party members, it's only the main character of each chapter who really matters later in the game, but you still get anywhere from like 1 to 4 characters. There's an optional robot version of your main character that you can get in Edo, Japan. There are people who come and go. The way that your party works throughout these 7 chapters is pretty unique. Like most RPGs wouldn't be willing to like give you someone and then just yank them away for the rest of the game. But since it's only like a couple of hours worth of gameplay for any given one of these, they're a lot more flexible with when they give you and take away characters.
Oh, can we talk about my favorite side characters of the game in the other chapter that I played?
Yes, please.
In Near Future, a chapter that is clearly influenced by tokusatsu film and television, because it is about a boy with psychic powers and huge spiky hair, a Bosuzoku motorcycle riding punk. The boy's name is Akira. That's sort of Akira's big brother figure and mentor, and eventually teaming up with a mad scientist and piloting a giant robot at the end. Early in this story, your little sister's pet turtle is injured or dying, and you take the turtle to the mad scientist, and the scientist's solution is to liquefy the turtle and put him inside a turtle robot. And this goofy looking turtle robot
Oh, I love its
is
design.
your best bud the rest
Yeah,
of
it is good.
the rest of the chapter. And this chapter is bonkers. Like, you live in an orphanage, you are alternately very kind and somewhat bullying to the orphan children. Your sister's there too, and she's sickly. But you also can, in a moment that reminded me of Golden Sun a little bit, you can read the minds of anyone in this chapter. So you have the option to press A to engage in dialogue with an NPC, or press Y to read their mind. And sometimes you like to figure out where you go next. You have to read the mind of someone to get a clue. But you also can give any item in the game to the mad scientist, and he'll try to upgrade it to a better item, and that can give you like equipment for your turtle robot buddy, or equipment for you, or powerful healing items. You can also work at a taiyaki stand. Taiyaki is fish flavored bread. That's a popular snack in Japan. And at the taiyaki stand, you can gain money to gain more items, and then try to upgrade those with the mad scientist. So it's a weird, like, brief business sim and tokusatsu story where you eventually infiltrate an evil base and defeat a robot that is the deceased that is powered by the liquefied remains of the father of one of the children of the orphanage,
That was quite messed
which
up.
was a dark twist I didn't really see coming. And and realize that a combination of a rogue general of the Japanese military and a different mad scientist from your friendly mad scientist, and a local cult leader are trying to combine the technology and resources and supernatural powers of that they each possess to revive an ancient god that resembles like it resembles like an ancient Japanese Aharabata statue mixed with a parrot, or you know what I mean, an Aharabaki statue mixed with a parrot. So it's like an old Japanese idol, except a giant bird, and you end up piloting the scientist's giant robot king guy.
Which is essentially Tetsujin 28, like straight up.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a little bit of yeah, there's a little bit of like Astro Boy, a little bit of Battle of the Planets, a little bit of a lot of Akira, a little bit Kamen Rider in this in this story. That eventually is a giant robot battle against this evil bird god that is totally bonkers, and you're also selling fish bread at a taiyaki stand, and there's orphans. You realize that your big brother figure that eventually accidentally kills himself by overdosing on mind altering drugs. Just before he dies, he confesses that he's the person that killed your father, who was a police officer many years ago, and left you an orphan. It's
Big revelations.
It's a wild ride.
Yeah.
Other than maybe the evil martial artists killing 2 of your disciples in the Imperial China, I think this chapter had the most intense twists in the series so far. Although I should mention I haven't played Wild West, Distant Future, or Twilight of Edo. So, but yeah, near future was pretty crazy start to finish.
It's a roller coaster ride for sure.
Yeah, I think it was probably like the best story of all of the different anthologies.
Yeah, and honestly, being able to read minds allowed you to get so much deeper into it. And like a lot of those big story revelations from your friend Lawless there, where he tells you all about, what he did to your father, come from reading his mind, and he just knows you're reading his mind and tells you there because he doesn't have the energy to verbalize anything.
Yeah,
And that keeps happening.
he's on his deathbed when that happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. This happens with, half of the revelations in the game just come from you mind reading. And to give a little bit of a sneak peek into the last chapter, you could pick your main character and you'll get their field ability for that last chapter. So you can go around and read the minds of everyone in the last chapter, or you'll just never see it because you didn't pick Akira as your main character. And that is absolutely bonkers to me, the amount of like extra writing and extra effort that goes into an ability like that in one chapter.
Oh, that's fun. I might have to take him along then. I was already thinking about taking him along because you get to pick 4 characters, right?
Yes.
I haven't met all of them yet, but I should say I am pretty attached to Akira, Leikugo, and Pogo, and less attached to Masaru. So I might already have 75% of my final team already, but we'll see how the rest of the chapters play out.
Yeah, I think I know who I'm going with for the final chapter this go around, but we'll see.
No, let's share that now. Wes, who do you think your 4 are right now? Where your head is at?
So my main character most likely is the one we haven't talked about, the Sundown Kid from the Wild West chapter.
All right, we will get into that right after we share our final teams. So go for it.
Because he's incredibly hard to recruit, so making him your main character is really nice. Plus, he's got all these cool Wild West gun abilities that I'm absolutely in love with. Like the look of a gun of a spaghetti western gunslinger is like close to my heart.
This is maybe the easiest character to tell what the cinematic inspiration was of.
Like, absolutely. And then definitely Lei. Lei is just super powerful. Whoever the inheritor is ends up being super powerful because the ability that they get, like story-wise at the end of that, absolutely blows random encounters out of the water. Cube is fantastic, and I can't go anywhere without him. You can actually upgrade him with some of the pieces that you get to upgrade your turtle robot in the near future chapter. So like,
oh, okay.
If you take off all of the accessories that you've gotten to give him abilities, you can give those abilities to Cube, and
right, like the stun gun and the goldfish launcher and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
God, the goldfish launcher is so good.
Yeah, I used that once I figured out I could upgrade weapons for the turtle robot. I did some upgrade grinding a little bit and got him. I think I forget what all of them were called. I think it was the rock launcher and the goldfish launcher. So I had him chucking rocks and fish at the at the mecha boss of that in the facility. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. My final of the 4 almost has to be Oboromaru from the Edo period.
Right. Okay.
Because he is, you might not expect this, but the single best elemental caster in the game.
Really better than Akira.
Yeah. Because he covers a lot more. His abilities are a lot more consistent. Akira's not bad. Like you can kind of take or leave either one of them. But for my money, Oboromaru is a crazy good caster, despite being a ninja.
But do I get Akira's inventory if I don't recruit him?
You can recruit everyone, but you have to pick 4 people to come with you. So you can recruit everyone who's equipped, and then strip them of whatever you want before you land on your final party.
Okay.
And to be honest, I'd kind of recommend doing that because just sort of recruiting them to your party, like it's quite fun, and also like it just gains you levels for the final boss, which is actually quite difficult.
Oh, all right. But anyway, I still need to meet the Sundown Kid and Oboromaru, and Cube for that matter. But I already really like Pogo, Leikugo, and maybe Akira for my final party. But Tom, when you beat because you have already finished. What was your final party for the final boss?
Yeah, so I went with Obamaru, and then I also went with Yoon, Sundown, and Pogo. I think I was sort of like trying to get a balance of like sort of all sort of aspects. I also I struggled a little bit, so I did sort of look up not like a guide on how to beat the game, but sort of the better characters, and that was kind of what put me off kind of using Akira because people were like, he's not that great. which is a bit unfortunate because he was probably my favorite character in the game. But yeah, they're the 4 that I went with. I really liked Sundown a lot actually, so I think you'll definitely enjoy the that chapter.
Yeah, it's a standout chapter for sure.
Interesting. Okay. Well then, before we close shop, let's talk about Sundown's chapter a little bit, because that's the one we haven't really approached yet. I mean, the guy obviously looks like Clint Eastwood in the Man with No Name trilogy. Fistful of Dollars for a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Three of the best Western movies ever made. But Wes, tell us a little bit about the Sundown Kid.
Yeah, it's heavily inspired by those in so many ways, including the music. And it plays out like a classic, man with no name wandering into a town where there's trouble, solves it, leaves kind of thing, where the Sundown Kid has a bounty on his head and is being chased by a bounty hunter named Black. Oh, I always call it Black Bart, and I don't know if that's right or not.
Black Bart was a real Old West villain. He was a famous stagecoach robber.
So, yeah, and I think that's why I keep calling him Black Bart, but it's actually Black something or other.
Sure, all right.
But you're being chased by this bounty hunter. And, you have a couple of little standoffs with him before you end up in this town that's besieged by bandits, every single day. And of course, as the wanderer through towns, despite your bounty, you decide that you're going to help them. And the majority of the chapter is you going and exploring the town and picking up anything you can from the houses to make traps, so that when this final encounter comes in, you knock out as many of the people as you can before your final fight.
So would you gain less experience doing that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Huh. But I know that it's advantageous because the board, the kind of tactical play field that you're on will be literally filled if you don't take out everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like I should invest in some preparation when I play that one soon.
Not to mention you get some of the most fun scenes of the whole game from some of the traps that you can lay.
Ironically, that story that you're setting up sounds a little bit like A Fistful of Dollars and a little bit like The Magnificent Seven, which ironically are both adaptations of samurai movies.
Sanjuro and Seven Samurai.
Yeah. No. Yojimbo and Seven Samurai. Yeah.
I always mix up the names on those.
Sanjuro is the sequel to Yojimbo.
Yes.
But it might be a slightly better movie because I think it's like 90 minutes instead of 3 hours, and is actually kind of funny. I whatever. Like Yojimbo.
I've never seen Sanjuro actually, and I
really?
should. I've seen Yojimbo, but not Sanjuro.
Yeah, Sanjuro is the name of the main character of Yojimbo and Sanjuro, because whenever they ask his name, he looks over, and in the first one, he sees a mulberry field, and he says, "Oh, and he says, "Oh, I'm a 30-year-old mulberry field," and Sanjuro means 30-year-old person or 30-year-old man, and I forget, and I think in Sanjuro, he does the same introduction, but it's like Lily it's lilies instead of mulberries, and he says, you know what, I'm actually closer to 40 now, but whatever, like classic Toshiro Mifune line.
Yeah,
he also plays the best character in Seven Samurai. He also looks exactly like Mitsurugi from Soul Calibur 5, if you're unfamiliar with Akira Kurosawa's oeuvre. But whatever, I've outed myself as a big fan of samurai movies and westerns, and that makes me only more eager to finally get to Twilight of Edo Japan and the Wild West scenarios in Live Alive. And I haven't mentioned this yet, but I've been mispronouncing the name Live Alive for a solid 20 years, maybe closer to 25 years.
There was a lot of debate about that on social media.
I always thought it was Live Alive, because it's like you're living 7 different lives. But instead of Live a Life, they went with Live Alive for the symmetry of it. So I always thought it was Live Alive.
Me too.
Nope. The Japanese developers in the media for this game in 2022 consistently say Live Alive, so that's what I have to call it now, but I won't like it.
Live Alive just flows so much easier.
Yeah, and it makes some logical sense. Like, oh yeah, it's an anthology of 7 stories, actually 8, actually 9 if you count the finale, and you're living these lives. So Live Alive. It was satisfying to me psychologically, but I'll have to live with the knowledge that I've been wrong for a few decades. But but I am eager to get to this. Like, I knew a little bit about it going in. I know that there's some kind of unifying evil force or evil spirit that represents the bosses of each of the 7 chapters. I know that chapter 8, I know it's what is it? It's either Middle Ages or medieval times, and I know that it explains more. It goes into the backstory of the Odo Odie villain, is my
Mhm.
understanding of it, but I don't know the specifics of the chapter. And I did know that you pick 4 of the heroes to for the final boss, but I didn't know you could recruit all 7. That's actually nice. So I'll be less anxious about not getting the inventory of 3/7 of the team. So that's pretty good. But I I still have some playing to do, and we have gone over these 7 stories. Listeners, if you haven't played Live Alive or aren't playing along with us, I hope this at least sounds intriguing, because unless I'm really misunderstanding context clues here, I think this is 3 ringing endorsements of Live Alive. This game
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
fun and weird and interesting, or alternately at least one of those things at the same time. And I'm frankly excited to get to the end.
Yeah, I think the ending makes it even better, I would say. Like, it wraps it all up really nicely.
And Wes, is there? I know that you're a fan of this game. Is there any reason to go back to the old Super Famicom version, or like is it Switch all the way?
I would advise Switch all the way, but the Super Famicom version has this interesting little thing where the text boxes are unique per and menus are unique per chapter. It's like you have these old Western looking text boxes in the Wild West
Oh,
chapter.
that's
You
cute.
and that's absolutely adorable to look at. It's not enough to replay the entire game in a more difficult to get through way. Um, but it's still a gorgeous game for the Super Nintendo, and it's worth taking a look at, if not necessarily playing all the way through.
And I don't think this was in the Super Famicom version, but I actually really like this game's basic menu, because when you press X and go into the menu, it's all the characters in your party standing on a platform or a cliff or an empty space, sort of
Oh yeah.
sort of looking to the left, and it's communicated very clearly, and it's just a pretty menu. I like a game with pretty menus.
And I love that those little vignettes you see them in like change throughout the course of a chapter a lot of times. Like if you had a new party member, everyone will rearrange, or you might even be in a different location.
Or yeah, I remember in the prehistoric one, as Beru was leaving or joining the party, like they would all like Gory and Pogo would be like fighting in the menu, or all 3 characters would be laughing, or they would all look hungry. There's a lot of visual. First of all, I love a clean menu. I love I love a menu with some personality, and this is all of those things. It's some great menus.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know.
beautiful.
All right, if I'm talking about how much I like these menus, and instead of and putting off the rest of the discussion, maybe it's time to end the podcast. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this truncated journey through Live Alive. We're going to get into Chapter 8 and the end game in the next episode, and I guarantee, with a capital G, that I will be finished with the game by then. So help me. So we will be excited to discuss that next week. But what else is happening in the future of Retro Encounter? After we round out September with more Live Alive, we're doing the Autumn of Adventure in October, and I haven't finished any of these games yet. But over those 4 weeks of October, we're going to be having individual episodes on Secret of Monkey Island, Broken Age, The Wolf Among Us, and The Quarry. So 2 games written by Tim Schafer and friends, and 2 games indirectly about werewolves, so or wolfmen of sorts. So and each of them represents sort of a different decade and different chapter of the history of the adventure game, starting with a 1991 game, then Telltale of the 2000s, then Broken Age with Double Fine returning to adventure games, and then The Quarry, which is a game that came out in 2022, and which is another entry in Supermassive's pretty impressive run of horror adventures that started with Until Dawn several years ago. So we're doing a journey through the history of adventure games in October, culminating in a Halloween episode. And that is all coming in the next few months. But listeners, if you want to comment to us about Live Alive or adventure games or werewolves or cavemen or whatever, the best way to do so is to email retro@rpgfan.com. You can also visit rpgfan.com's message boards, our Facebook page, on Twitter and Instagram we are rpgfancom, and there's also rpgfan Discord, YouTube channel, Twitch channel, something going on almost every day of the week on Twitch. So there are many ways to interact with RPG Fan in any way you choose, including 2 other podcasts: Random Encounter every 2 weeks about randomness and what games are playing, and Rhythm Encounter every other 2 weeks about RPG music. And you can subscribe to Retro Encounter or those other podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, whatever service you choose. Please give us feedback. We love feedback, but our favorite kind of feedback most recently is the RPG Fan store. We opened up a store that is hosted by tpublic.com, and you can get RPG Fan merch, including shirts, mugs, pins, phone cases, and other things emblazoned with RPG Fan's Emerald Shield logo. Please, if you want to support the website and the podcast, check out the store and maybe order something. Maybe you'll love it. But another thing that we love is positive feedback as individuals and not as just a podcast. So let's share with you, the listener, the panel's social media presences, starting with you, Wes.
You can find me most easily on Twitter at Wes Iliff.
All right, Tom, your turn.
Yeah, just like Wes, you can find me on Twitter at VoicelessTom.
And I'm going to make it 3 for 3. You can find me on Twitter also. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times, and on RPG Fans Discord, I am Monsoon Mike. So let's see. My choices next are, do I want a ninja action movie, a classic Western movie, or a future space horror movie?
All good choices.
You know, they all sound pretty dope,
Yeah.
not gonna lie. But I have plenty of time to make that decision. Listeners, thank you, good night, and good luck.